Welcome to How to Trust Your Intuition, the podcast, the place where we learn that trust is earned and not given, even with ourselves. I'm your host, Betsy LaFay. I'm a social worker, turned award-winning psychic medium, turned intuition teacher. And my school, Trust Yourself Intuition School, celebrated its 10th anniversary in 2023. Join us each episode as we interview thought leaders and luminaries in every genre. They talk about how and when they learn to trust their intuition. Most say they're still learning. What happens when they do trust it, and what happens when they don't. Stick around as we all walk together down the road towards trusting our intuition. Without further ado, it's a joy to bring to you Tanmeet to the show. Welcome.
Thank you, Betsy. I'm so happy to be here.
Yes, I'm very excited. Could you share with the audience who you are, maybe about what you do in the world and what you can bring to the show, what your gifts are in the world?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So I'm Tanmeet Sethi, and I'm an integrative and psychedelic medicine physician. I actually have been in integrative and family medicine primary care for the last 25 years on the front lines in the hospital and the clinic, delivering babies, the whole thing. And now I'm turning to integrative and psychedelic medicine. And I do research on psilocybin at the University of Washington as well. I'm a clinical associate professor there. I've been working in global trauma around the world for the last 20 years, doing work in from school shootings to hurricanes, wildfires, communities that have suffered from unfathomable trauma, Ukraine, everywhere. And I'm also a TEDx speaker and the author of a new book called Joy is My Justice, which came out on May 2nd this year and is really, Betsy, a culmination of my life work in the sense that my life and professional and personal work, and really looking at joy as a human right, as a birthright. My work in medicine has really largely been around social justice and activism, taking care of marginalized communities and fighting for justice through health equity. And this book is really a culmination of that and all my trauma work in the sense of looking at joy as something that is humanly innate, not to be given to us, but ours to have. And not only ours to have, but ours necessary to have in the face of oppression and trauma. And so we can talk more about that as well. But that's really my work in the world. And I'm also a mother and have 3 children, and I am all those things. Yes.
When can I read your biography? Because I want to interview you for a chapter for every sentence or even half sentence of what you just shared. Like,
oh, thank you.
I was taking notes, like not for show notes, because like, oh, I want to talk about this and holy cow and whoa. And like, you were just talking about like psychedelic research, and I was squirming in my seat because joy was exuding, and then all of a sudden, and then you're like, joy is justice, and I'm just like, all right, I just need to run around the block like 5 times, like this is incredible. Okay, let me just say that I don't think I want to ask that original question, but we'll see. What I want to say is that my healing journey, which I'm still in the thicket of for CPTSD, shifted dramatically when I decided to microdose psilocybin. And also at the same time, I started taking this stuff called Brillia. Do you know what Brillia is? People have not heard of it. It's this homeopathic thing. I can't really speak to it too much, but it was originally for kids with ADD, and I started taking it before I started taking Western medicine for my ADD, and it changed a lot. So my everything shifted, and even my therapist, like 3 months later, like remarked, was like, whoa, like, wow. And psilocybin has been spiritual medicine along with all the other types of medicine for me. for decades now. So I'm thrilled. I'm so excited. I did not know that you were doing that. And it's just, you can't see what's going on visually in my brain, but what you talked about, you said, I was delivering babies, and my thought was like, that's one of the most psychedelic things you can do. It's like birthing babies, giving birth to babies, death and dying, or like breath work, without ingesting any substance, like, or jumping off a cliff, let's say, right? So it's like all of those things. It's like, okay, that's psychedelic. And then it's like, oh, then I went to like integrative psychedelic medicine, and it's like, well, we've got the rebirth that happens all the time in that space. So of course you're going to be great in there. But what I really want to share, what I really want to ask and have you talk about is what you ended with, which might even be like your pitch for the book, where you're like, especially joy is justice, especially in the face of oppression and trauma. So you can see how everything that I talked about was this big circle, which is you, and now we're spitting out at the end, which is where we presumably both are. And can you talk about that? Because here's my dual brain. My intuitive brain knows that it can't be possible that you need to have privilege to experience joy. That cannot be possible because we have bodies, because we have minds, right? It's done. But most people equate those two together, and I've lived it. I am living it. So can you please speak on that? I'm going to be a sponge.
Yes. Yes, this is the foundational concept of the book, which is that. So I'm going to take a step back, Betsy, for you and explain, and then get very deep into what you're saying, because that is really the crux of what I'm talking about. So, as I said, I've been an activist and fighting on the front lines for a long time, decades. And yet, at one point when I was pregnant with my third child, I received a death sentence for my second. He received a diagnosis of what's called Duchenne muscular dystrophy, which is like an ALS for children.
How old was he?
He was barely 3.
Okay.
And I was pregnant with my third and got this news. And it was the first time, Betsy, that I didn't have anything to fight for. Because when something's wrong, I grew up experiencing a lot of racism and oppression, and fought and fought and fought. And this was the first time I couldn't fight. And not that we can always get what we want when we fight, but this was the first time it felt like there was nothing to fight for. And it was then that I started on this journey of understanding that joy, the more I tried to search for it in the face of what felt like unmovable tragedy, the more I realized that joy was the deepest justice I would ever find, because it was in my body, true liberation in my body. And the truth is, trauma lives in our body, but it's also where it heals. And so the reason that I wrote this book is because, well, A, everyone kept asking me, how the hell do you have joy, given everything? And B, was that I do this work with my patients all the time, because what I really am working with people in individually and in groups with is disconnection, loss of meaning, loss of purpose. And yes, it shows up in pain and their high blood pressure and their diabetes and their sugars and everything. But really at the fundamental root was a loss of connection and joy. And
now,
so
when you say lots of connection, you're talking about connection to what?
To themselves, to the world.
Okay.
Yeah. So feeling disconnected, feeling lost, feeling like there was no purpose left. And so this idea that joy is about privilege is, I think, fundamentally where it's rooted in the fact that happiness and joy get confused all the time. So happiness is a beautiful thing, but it's a cognitive outcome. It's based on what you have or what you're going to get or what can go right and what is right with your life. And the truth is that many of us, in fact, most of us, do not have constructs of life that are happy, either
Right.
because
Who's happy then? It's like,
because of tragedy,
right.
loss, grief, oppression, trauma, suffering, right? And so it's very hard then to believe that you're not broken when you can't be happy. But the truth is, joy comes from a very different place. Joy comes from the same deep well as your pain, as your capacity for love and connection and meaning. And joy was always in you, and joy is always in you, and isn't anyone's to give or take away. And so when we start to practice the tools that we need to allow joy to emerge, and that's what this whole book is about through a blending of story and the neuroscience, when we start to understand that through a lens of equity and justice, what we understand is that joy is not a privilege. It is actually innately what we need and have to do in the face of oppression and trauma. Because every piece of trauma and oppression that we suffer from strips us of our joy, of our humanity, of our capacity for self-worth and power. And all these practices restore that. And that is why joy is justice.
I love that. I really, really love that. This may be just me. I'm also on the autism spectrum, so that's why sometimes I get very specific of like, what do you mean? Joy is justice makes sense with the way that you explained it. When I hear like birthright, to me, I hear like the Supreme Court may like rule against, but that happens in my subconscious. And I thought this is where you're going, and I'm sure this is part of it too, but like I feel like the same construct that makes people believe that joy is only affordable to those who can afford it is the same construct that you were fighting against your whole life, before you got, with your son, right? Um I'm just thinking, just for myself, like that's what it triggers in me. I feel like it brings up more of a, I have to fight for joy, which the whole time you're talking, I'm thinking about George Carlin's saying, you fighting for peace is like fucking for virginity. Part of my French. You can't, right? Or Martin Luther King, right? Darkness can't drive out darkness, only light can do that, right? Joy specifically being different from happiness. I honestly feel like you've just described how I was able to not only survive, but heal as relatively quickly as I have been healing because of my joy practice.
Yeah.
Basically. So before we get into the questions, can we talk about some joy? It sounds like you've got some practices in there. So can we talk about that, or even joy as a practice? I'd love to get a little bit into that because I think it's very important.
Yeah. Yeah. So first, I want people who are listening to understand that joy, just as you said, it's different from happiness. And so when I say joy practice, there are, dozens of practical skills that I talk about in the book, but it also means people have to understand that having joy means that you feel everything. Okay. And that doesn't sound enticing all the time, right? Like, who wants to feel the hard stuff? But what I will tell you is that if you can walk towards your pain, if you can be with your pain, you will find this revolution of joy because it sits right next to it. And the way that I like to describe it that makes more sense to people is that if you turn off your emotions to numb the pain, you also turn off everything that can bring you joy. And so to be human means feeling everything. Now, that's not so, it's simple, but not so easy to do, right?
Right.
So it might start with something as simple as understanding, as I was saying before, stepping into your body is the most important thing. Getting out of your head and in your body. And so how do you do that? Many, many ways. But one simple way might be to start is to just notice, not try to change, but notice what you feel in your body through the day while you're doing what you always do, washing dishes, checking your email, or whatever it is. Just take a moment. What do I feel in my body? Close your eyes. Constriction, tension, ease, freedom, pain, relaxation. I don't know, but just notice where and what you feel. Once you start doing that, these practices are even more profound. A simple one would be to notice your breath. I mean, I know it sounds so simple. In fact, it's so simple that nobody wants to do it because it's like, oh, God, you want me to notice my breath and you think I'll feel better? I don't know. What I'm saying is it's an invitation to feel what you feel, because healing is feeling what you feel and then feeling into that. And so really sitting with what you feel in your body and noticing your breath as it goes through actually is a moment of joy practice because you are there with yourself, right? And what we're trying to do all day is escape ourselves. You know, understandably, because who wants pain? And also, how did we survive this far? We escaped pain, right? We survived. And so it is an evolutionary biologic thing that we do that makes sense. But it doesn't serve us chronically. It doesn't serve us in the long term to be running away from all of what we feel. And so part of it is just getting comfortable with the discomfort. And, you know, people will ask me all the time, they'll say, I can't imagine what you're going through with your son. And what I say to people is, I would invite you to imagine, because if you could imagine my pain, it will allow you to see yours more clearly. And imagination is a bridge of justice. It's a bridge of connection. To say you can't imagine my pain only isolates me and makes me feel excluded. If you try to sit with me in my pain, then I understand we have a connection and a relationship here, and that there's someone who's willing to be with me, and what I'm going through isn't so alien then. I'll just start there.
Yes, I'm so glad you brought that specific example up. When I graduated with a BA in psychology in 2002, attachment work was only applied to children. Now, in 2023, it seems to be all the rage for a reason, because knowing your attachment type, there are three main types: avoidant, anxious, and secure, really changes your life. And if you listen to the podcast where I talked about how I lost $100,000 from a spiritual, quote unquote, spiritual coach, the silver lining to that experience was me discovering the root of a lot of my issues. I was anxiously attached. I had anxious attachment. At the very end of that terrible, terrible situation, yes, it was traumatic, I came across Maya Diamond's work. And it was working through her program that literally rewired my brain from anxious to secure. This is how I made it through all of my major transitions over the past 2 years and discovered so much about myself. Now, if you don't know about attachment work, don't feel bad. Here's a typical situation, in fact, the most common situation that happens with these attachment styles. Person A and person B are in a relationship. They care about one another. Person A reaches out to person B, doesn't hear back right away. So then maybe sends another text or another gesture. which further pushes person B away. Both people get resentful, and eventually they might break up. I was in that situation more often than I'd like to remember. I married the wrong person, I had toxic family relationships, and had no idea until I took Maya's program. So, the link for a free consultation is in the show notes, and I'm so happy to offer it all the podcast listeners. If you sign up for her program, you will get a free session worth $500 with Maya Diamond herself, one-on-one. That's just for How to Trust Your Intuition podcast listeners. I can't imagine when there's something intense or traumatic going on. You're only the second person I've ever heard talk about that, which brings me so much hope. And you know, just to tag on and you know, say it just another way, the same thing. Like, to me, when somebody says I can't imagine, what they're actually saying is I won't imagine. I don't want to imagine. I'm closing you and your experience out, which is what you said. Like, it has a disconnection, and it's a lie too. You can. I invite you to. That's a big step for that person, perhaps, to say that.
Sure.
That's very, very helpful. Thank you. I could speak volumes on that, and perhaps I'll add a little mini episode about me getting my joy back.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
in many different ways, but I'll save that story for another time because I really want to get to your stories. So I would love to know about you learning to trust your intuition, how, when, if you're still learning, and maybe you have something you already want to say, but I would love to hear if anything comes to mind, specifically with embodiment, right? Because that's where we're in full alignment, right? Embodiment and feeling all of your emotions are exactly what I teach. So yeah, let's hear what you have to say.
Oh, so many times. You know, I actually, when you ask, you know, when do you trust your intuition? For me, it's all about, when do I trust my body? When do I trust the messages that my body is giving me? And when do I not? That for me is when my intuition is speaking to me or when I'm not listening to it. A very powerful time where I listened to my intuition was when I was doing a body scan of just looking through my body and actually trying to ask questions to it. And in that time, I got a very powerful message from my skin, actually, which is not a place I normally get messages from. And I actually talk about this in the book, but in greater detail. But what I really heard was, I love you, that my brown skin loved me, and that it loved me for no reason other than I was human and I deserved to be loved. And this is after decades of feeling not comfortable or loving in my brown skin, feeling that I wanted it to be whiter or different or invisible. And getting that message over and over, I love you, and me saying I love you back, actually is where I got the title of the book, because I opened my eyes and I felt such pure joy. I felt such pure love. And I opened my eyes and I thought, joy is my justice. And I heard it so clear. And it was a moment of feeling that, you know, all these experiences of feeling wrong in my skin were all almost just held in love in that moment of loving my skin back for holding all of that for me. And so for me, intuition is purely body messages.
Wow. That's very, very, very powerful. Really opens my heart. Thank you for that. Did you have a process of learning this? Did you learn it from somewhere? Did you grow up with it? Did you have to learn by trial and error? Like, how did you come to this?
Well, you know, I luckily for me, I was already studying mind body medicine at the Center for Mind Body Medicine in Washington, D.C., where I'm senior faculty now. And I was studying there, and that's also where I've done through them all of my trauma work around the world. And I was learning meditation and imagery and body scans, and really just how to be in my body again, how to notice it and to reconnect with it. And so I was already doing that for a couple of years before I got my son's diagnosis. And it really was a gift because it was what propelled me on the path of even deeper and deeper into that. And so I can say for sure that my embodiment work is why I think my life is perfect, not despite my son, but because of my son. And so, I would welcome anyone who, I get asked, Betsy, all the time after a talk, I get asked and told, what you said really moved me, but there's a but. But I don't think I could do that. And what I say first is it's just an invitation. It's an invitation to something different. And if I have time, I ask, and how is what you're doing working for you? Because you wouldn't have stood in line to ask to tell me this if there wasn't something that was pulling at you from what I said. And the truth is, Betsy, that swimming in the muck of life is hard, hard stuff. And what I'm doing by talking about a joy practice and using these tools daily sounds hard to people. But I promise you, and I ask people to trust me, it is not harder than swimming in that muck every day.
Yeah. Yeah. That's just amazing. What advice do you have for people who would like more consistency? I mean, I'm sure you hear that. That's probably the next biggest or bigger question. I'd like to hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you asked me that because I'm actually I have two things that I think really help. And the first one is from the very beginning of close to the beginning of my book. And I'm at the moment doing a Journeying into Joy series, diving into different parts of my book on Instagram and Facebook. And this is what we're talking about this month. And I just read from that part last week, and it's what I call your deeper why. And many people talk about it. It's not my made up concept. What I'm saying is that I really believe, first of all, the neuroscience is clear. Anytime you want a new habit, if you can anchor into your deeper why, you are more likely to stick with it every time, because you'll slip up because that's human. So people say I slip up, and I say it's a slippery world. This is just part of being human. There is no level of change that is linear. It is a spiral, right? We go and we slip. And so your deeper why will anchor you every time. And so people may think it's easy to understand why my deeper why for joy or my work would be to feel better. That seems easy. But if you really unlayer more deeply into that, you'll find more reasons that anchor you much more strongly. For me, my work, this mission I'm on to shift consciousness and to bring joy to people as their human right, and to shift consciousness through my medical work and healing work, it might sound like I'm just a good person, that I like to help people. Sure, I am. I'm proud of what I do. But the fundamental truth is my deeper why, and I wouldn't know this if I didn't practice this, go through the unlayering of it, is because I have never felt safe in this world. And to make it safer for everyone else in their bodies and in the world helps me remember it's safer for me. And so that is why my deeper why anchors me in it. If it was just about helping people, then the hard days when people are annoying or, it's too hard, then I would stop doing it. But that's not why I do it only. That is a beautiful part of it, but it's not why I do it only.
Wow.
And so I would ask anyone to look at what they're doing and to find a deeper why. The second thing for consistency, I would say, is to stack the first things you try with something you already do. It's a simple technique called habit stacking, but I wouldn't get too involved in the names and the whatever, the hacks. I would just say, what do I want to do? How can I remember to do it? If you are trying to remember, for instance, I'm always working with people on trying to just put in 1 to 5 minutes of breath in your day, right? And people will say, I'm not sure I can remember, or when am I going to do that? I ask them, do you brew tea or coffee in the morning? Can you stand there while you're doing it and not do anything else, not check your phone, not do anything else? Do you check your email every day? Before you check your email, can you take a few breaths? Do you go to sleep every day? Can you do it before you sleep? What are the things you do every day where you can stack something that you may read about in my book or somewhere else? And those two things, the deeper why and the stacking, will start you on a path where you will do it consistently enough where you will see change. And anytime we feel change, we have impetus to do more.
Oh, I love hearing that. That's amazing. That's really, really great. Do you have any story that comes to mind where intuition said to do something and you did not trust it and you did the opposite?
Yeah. I think I still do that. I think that, we all do that. I hope that, at least I hope I'm not the only one, but I have many times where I have not listened. I think one time that really stands out to me, I don't know if the outcome would have been any different, but I think about this a lot, is that I mentioned this in my book too, is that when my son was born, he had a very difficult delivery, and then he had multiple challenges, some seizures, speech delay, all of these things. This is well before we got his diagnosis for those first 3 years. So we had a rocky road to begin with. And I knew, Betsy, something bigger was wrong. I knew it. And I kept saying it, and I heard it over and over. But I wanted to believe that I was wrong. And I wanted to not think that something bigger was wrong. And my husband, who's the purveyor of all is right in the world, would keep, you're being a doctor. You're not being a mom. Just let him develop, that kind. And it all made sense.
Right.
But I was right though, obviously. And, I think sometimes we just don't want to believe it. Yeah. And I don't know that anything different would have changed, but I do think that it is proof to me that the wisdom of my intuition is real, and that it is up to me to listen or not.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a beautiful thing, primarily teaching people how to trust themselves, right? With my school and all of that. Like, that's what I say. It's like, if you just deepen your awareness, and even if you're aware that your intuition is saying to do something and you don't do it, exactly like you said, it still, as you said, you see a little bit of change and you're prone to go there more, right? Because either you got burnt by not following it, or you missed out by not following it, or whatever. And that proof is very, very helpful. That's amazing. That's really amazing and incredible. Can we talk a little bit about your current psychedelic work? I'd love to hear more about that. You're all ready for your vacation. It's really hectic getting here, but you're seated in your airplane seat, looking out the window, and you hear the pilot come on the intercom. Good day, everyone. It's a beautiful day outside, 71 and sunny. As you're aware, to get to where we're going, we need to fly over that mountain range, and sometimes there can be a little bit of turbulence. I'm about 80% sure we'll get there safely. So buckle up, relax, and enjoy your flight. I know that sounds like an absurd situation, but when I put this in context of trusting yourself and trusting your intuition, and I ask people on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most, how much do you trust yourself? 8 is a very high score when asking people. So if you fall on a 2 to 4 range, you're totally not alone. Now picture this other scenario. You're out to lunch with a friend, and the friend says that they've been having a really difficult time learning French. You ask the logical question, are you taking a class? And their answer is, well, I'm taking Spanish. Guess what? If you want to trust yourself deeply, if you want to have an easier time making decisions, break through blocks, connect with people, know who to connect with when, there's a class for that. I've actually helped thousands of people truly trust themselves in uncertainty, in times of doubt or fear, shame or guilt. And I have a free masterclass called Intuition 101, How to Trust Yourself in Uncertain Times, that will tell you everything you need to know in order to learn to trust yourself. The link is in the show notes. However, you can also go to howtotrustyourintuition.com, all spelled out.
Yeah. So, right now, as you probably know, except in Oregon, only ketamine is legal. So I'm practicing with ketamine right now, which I think is a powerful medicine. And so I practice with people individually and in groups, and I'll be starting groups in the fall. Primarily first for healers, for physicians, and then other healers who are suffering burnout and spiritual disconnection from their work. And so I do so much group work around the world, as I described in my trauma work, that I'm really wanting to meld that with the psychedelic medicine. And I'm really excited about that because the truth is, we've only ever healed in community. And so group work is so powerful for me, and it always has been. And so I'm doing that work now. And then I have been certified in all psychedelic plant medicines, MDMA, psilocybin, and all of that. I've done all that coursework, certification, and now I'm researching psilocybin at the University of Washington. We just finished the clinical phase of our study, which was on frontline medical workers suffering COVID burnout, and then we'll be doing more studies in the coming years. So, when psilocybin and MDMA are legal, then I'll be doing those as well with my patients. So I'm looking forward to the day when I have a choice and can individualize treatment. But my work with psychedelics is a little I don't think unique. I know others who do it this way, but different from what people are seeing pop up, which is that I don't do IV ketamine. I only do oral and intramuscular. And that's not because I don't think IV works. I think it works. I just do not want that tethering to a medical pathologized kind of non-ceremonial experience.
Yes.
I really believe psychedelics are ceremonial. I also really hold to my value of reciprocity, which is that we learn this only from our indigenous ancestors, and we really need, in my opinion, need to honor that and honor the way that they were given. And so I only do them with people in one-on-one ceremony or one in group. And I'm holding to create a foundation to offer low-cost psychedelic care to Indigenous and Black communities where we've really learned the most, and we really need to have access be the highest. So that's my practice of psychedelics.
Out of the three medicines that you named, I'm a fan of the healing properties of all of them, especially with a super trained, really high caliber person as a regulated. I know so little about ketamine, and I wouldn't be, besides what I learned in the 90s about ketamine, which is completely different.
Yeah.
I bet you the audience is the same. I'm going to be honest, like all I have is these Facebook ads that keep popping up. And my initial response, I'm sure, was like every other person who responded, like the Reefer Madness. I had these, things about, okay, now we're doing K now, whatever. Can you tell us more about it so that we can understand it?
Yeah. So as many people may know, not just a party drug, ketamine also has been used as a dissociative anesthetic for decades. And so used very safely in the operating room and on the war, the battleground in war as a pain treatment. And so ketamine's been around for a long time. It is a potent medicine that allows us to dissociate from the trauma in a non-reactive way so that we can process it better. It also, not only allows us to dissociate to process, but it allows us to also have neuroplasticity and create more of what's called BDNF, brain derived neurotrophic factor, which actually, especially in those first 72 hours after a ketamine session, allows us to re-cement neural connections, new connections in our brain, to shift perspective, gain new insights. The other reason I'm saying that I don't do psychedelics, and I don't know these ads that you're getting, but I don't, and I'll tell you, I don't agree with the fact that ketamine's being given without integration or prepreparation.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. Imagine that you must provide integration afterwards,
Yes.
especially because this is a chemically amazing time that you need to set this pottery here.
Yes.
This neuroplastic pottery.
Yes, I only do ketamine with people with preparation, the sessions, integration, never alone, and I won't do it. I won't do it.
Yeah.
And I really have met so many people, to be honest, who've been either inadequately guided or unguided. And left without not only scared and anxious, but also people really not getting the power of what they just experienced with proper integration. And so one of my missions is to I also offer integration to people on their own if they've already done psychedelics or are doing ketamine somewhere else. I'm happy to offer that preparation and integration. But my true love is to do it all with the same person. But I do have a harm reduction approach as well, so that if people have been doing it and not getting the integration they need, then, I'm happy to offer that as well.
Can you just give sort of a quick sort of what an overview of the integration would be?
Yeah. So integration is, people may think it's similar to counseling, and it is in some ways, but it's very focused integration on the experience itself of the medicine day and of pulling the threads. I think of it as gently pulling the threads of that journey and finding how this relates to your daily human life, right? It's beautiful to have a journey where you see the cosmos or you see new, but how are you going to help that change what you do tomorrow? Or how is that going to help your behavior? The other thing is that for me, and this probably is unique to only some of us, is that I'm also an integrative physician. So in integration, when we're talking about pulling those threads and how to change behavior, I'm also looking at is this person's microbiome balanced? Is, what do they need in terms of what they're ingesting in their food or thoughts, or what do we need to make sure that this behavior change is most potent? Is their thyroid regulated? All these things. So my integration's a little, more comprehensive in that way. But in general, psychedelic integration is really about pulling those threads and making sure that we can apply what we've learned, what we've seen, what we've experienced to how we will live now.
That makes complete sense. I would advocate for integration after any of those experiences, of course, but knowing what's the name of the chemical again? I'm fascinated with that.
A BDNF is what it's referred to as, brain derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF.
Yeah. Okay. That's are there other times we produce that?
Yes. It's actually increased when we meditate. It's increased when we exercise. It's increased actually when we certain potent herbs like turmeric increases BDNF. So there are lots of times where we can do that. I mean, it is catalyzed quite potently, I will say, in a psychedelic journey, but But if you're a regular meditator or a regular exerciser, you can really harness the power of that BDNF. Yes.
Right. So that's like that powerful time right after you exercise to learn something, right? Okay.
Yes.
I love it. I love it. The neurological psychology was my favorite topic in college. So I'm like all about this stuff. It's amazing. This has just been fascinating. Like I said, like I still want to every half sentence that we've had go off on all these tangents. But is there a way that people can work with you now? If so, how, what, where can they find you? What else would you like to share with people?
Oh, thanks for asking.
Yeah.
My website has everything. So it's tanmeetsethimd.com if you can link to that. And that has how to work with me, both, medically, and I offer also these joy journey sessions, non-medical, which are really about people asking, they've read the book and they really want to know, now, how do I really integrate this into my life? It's a different kind of joy integration, right? That's what I should call it, joy integration.
Yeah.
And then my book's also available anywhere books are sold, but you can see it on my website and buy from there, buy from those sellers. And I also have bonuses available and that kind of thing on my website. I'm most active on Instagram, but I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and I guess Threads. Oh my God, why? Another, it's the newest one. But anyway, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And I love to hear from people, Betsy. So if people had takeaways from this episode and they want to DM me or tag or comment when we post the episode or tag us, I love it. I love to hear from people. And I would love people to buy my book. It's been tremendous hearing how it's changed people's lives. And so yeah, joy is my justice. And it's available anywhere. Yeah.
Oh my goodness gracious. This is fantastic. Joy is it's my true north. So that's my driving factor. So, when I'm looking, especially to invite guests, and then I find out, okay, you've got a joy book, then I just freak out. So thank you for bringing your justice to your life, which has a ripple effect on everyone else, and helping everyone else integrate that into their lives. You're really a great gift to our world. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you, Betsy. It's been a pleasure to be with you.
It's been a joy.
Yes.
How to Trust Your Intuition, the podcast, is written, produced, and created by me, your host, Betsy LaFay. Music provided by Ben Talmy. If you don't want to be like that pilot that is 80% sure you'll get to your next destination safely, and you want to take the right class to learn the right language, and guess what? Intuition is a language. Head over to howtotrustyourintuition.com. I hope this podcast has been helpful to you. If it has, please forward it to a friend who you think it could also make a difference for. There's something that you can do for me and everyone else who listens to this podcast as well. If you hit subscribe, you'll never miss another episode. It'll also help the show get to other people. And of course, I know you've heard other podcast hosts say this before, but it's totally true. If you leave us a 5-star rating and a review, it helps other people like you discover this podcast. We all need to learn to trust our intuition. So, hit subscribe, give us a 5-star review, and write a little blurb while you're there. Your intuition will thank you.